红旗天气的真你给自己你都不有了。
Do quickly kind of talk about Lama Tsongkhapa, how he was really the one who unified the Sutra and Tantra streams, how we talk about in our lineage. I kind of hope maybe that Lamrim sometimes isn't, well, in your words, as sexy as Tantra. So sometimes I think it gets a bit neglected on as much importance for us Westerners who maybe aren't very familiar. So I was wondering if you could maybe mention our lineage, how Sutra and Tantra are very unified through Tsongkhapa's method.
You know, in the West, in the modern Europe, Thomas Aquinas synthesizer or the Renaissance. In the case of Tibet, it's a Renaissance, like Lama Tsongkhapa's time. There are so many practices, tantric practice here. Always like that, no? Once something introduced, then flood of the teaching, everybody started to pick and choose and this and that. Then the easy or non-conceptual, just meditate, you get enlightened, just shamatha and staying in that quietude, then regard that as an enlightenment, or these misunderstanding and confusion. That's what's happening at that time. And also all these lamas, Nima, or Kagyu, that hermit, or okay, you can get enlightened with concert, sex, and drinking, and all these things. It's gone to the wrong path, so to speak. So Lama Tsongkhapa was witnessing those. And of course, himself, he was a practitioner and he did a lot of retreat. He was wandering yogis. I talked about this mystical aspect of Lama Tsongkhapa's life. He came to his own realization with the help of Dakini. So what happened was his role at that time was really synthesizing and bringing back, so to speak, to Shakyamuni Buddha's teaching, authentic teaching. To Tenjinpa, he wrote Tsongkhapa, the Buddha in the land of snow. So really considered Lama Tsongkhapa as like a second Buddha, as well as Padmasambhava. He really revitalized Buddha's original point. Not just he created, synthesizing, pick and choose, and he created his own thing. No, he traced everything back to the Indian source. That's one of the greatest things he did. He traced back to the source, you can say, because Indian source is the ultimate. Lots of commentary, Tibetan commentary here and there. Each Lama gives some commentary. He didn't look at those things and pay attention to those things. He went back to Shantideva and Kamarashila and all these authentic texts. And then he synthesized based on Atisha. Atisha is the really trade bracelet. He was invited to Tibet by the Tibetan king, then came to Tibet. First, he witnessed what's going on in Tibet. Lots of people doing a lot of practices. Maybe sometimes feels like that's what's happening in the West right now. Lots of people doing their own pick and choose. I like this practice, I do this. I don't like this practice, I don't do, kind of thing. So that's the thing happening. Then he said, oh, you Tibetans, you practice so many Idan deities, so many practice, but even you practice so many, you cannot accomplish even one. But we Indians, so he's the Indian, Bengali Indians, we practice just one, then accomplish everything. Then he said, oh, I guess I have to stay in Tibet and do something about this. Or the king invited, oh, what's that? Can you tell us more about? Then Atisha created the lamp of the stages of the path to awakening, Ramdong. So that's the basis of Lama Tsongkhapa's Ramrim. Entire genre called Ramrim is based on Ramdong. Then go back to Lama Tsongkhapa. A few centuries after the Atisha, he synthesized it. He started from the beginning, how to tread the journey from beginning to the end, A to Z. so that the people can follow. They have a map. Before that was quite confusing. And also emphasis of certain aspect was not done. For example, ethical discipline, those are the really completely ignored by some yogis and have a misunderstanding of the emptiness. Yeah, another thing is emptiness, correct understanding of emptiness. So those things are emphasized, understood, and expressed in this genre called Lamrim. Then he composed a 6 Lamrim text. One of them we practiced yesterday, the foundation of good qualities. That was quite later on, after the great exposition of graduate path awakening. That's called Lamrim Chenmo. Actually, that's the first text I studied. When I was young, I didn't know what I got into. But anyway, I picked the shamatha. Of course, I thought the shamatha is the important, and the vipassana, wisdom sections. One last third of the whole text, Ramatsangkhapa devoted to shamatha and vipassana. So I picked that topic to read first text. Anyway, so it turned out didn't. So I thought if I know the shamatha, I get to nail the shamatha and get the emptiness right, then everything gonna be fine. Or the suffering is removed. I can help everybody. That's what I thought with this young, naive mind. Didn't turn out that way. But the thing is, the entire path laid out there, and the step by step. Of course, that is the Lamrim. Then Ramatsangkhapa also wrote the called Ngakrim Chenmo, Ngakrim, tantric path to awakening after that. Sutric Lamrim, tantric Lamrim. So Sutric Lamrim is the basis of Tantra, tantric Lamrim. Dechen Nimbo, early 20th century, Paponka Dechen Nimbo wrote a commentary, right? Commentary called The Liberation in the Palm of the Hand. There's a thick book translated into English. That was based on his lecture, chit-chat lectures, just before the empowerment, preliminaries. Like I do a little bit of chit-chat right before empowerment. Then empowerment portion is quite short, but just preliminaries. So I kind of emphasize nail the preliminary. So that was the preliminary to tantric empowerment. Then Tichen Rinpoche, 14th Dalai Lama's junior tutor, transcribed that lectures, which happened in Lhasa in Tibet, then became a book, commentary to Lamrim. So you know connection to the Sutra and Tantra. So that is the kind of preliminary to tantric practice. At the same time, if we have a rigid mind, I haven't nailed the preliminaries, I haven't nailed the sutric path, so I cannot move on to Tantra or something like that. That's also wrong view. Somehow we meet Tantra, which is so rare as the star in the daytime. Somehow we came across this tantric teaching, and perhaps not like me, if you meet the authentic teachers, that's called you are fortunate one. And then teaching lineage, meet the lineage, inclination to follow that lineage. Those are so precious. So we need to treasure that, regardless of you feel ready for that or not. Because of lack of foundation or something. You can study while you're practicing. You can enrich more and more. Regardless of how advanced you are in terms of practitioner, you come back again. Then you get the special insight until you have a realization of each point. You haven't completed. In other words, you have a lot to do. And in other words, you can enjoy more, became a juicy more and more. The more you have understanding through your experience, through your own practice, and you started to have an experience, right? may not be a realization yet, but experience. Then you use the sutric teaching. For example, renunciation. Some of you are mentioning renunciation is the first stumbling block on this journey. So nobody here, including myself especially, has completed yet. But we started to have a taste of it. What does that feel like? What that means? Then that realization or recognition or experience enhance your tantric practice and the refuge and bodhicitta. Right? Every day, every time we practice something, tantric practice, it has a refuge and bodhicitta. We had to come back again and again and deepen our understanding. So there's no two separate things. You know what I mean? In Dakini's Whisper, we have a lot of resources. If you haven't gone over, we have a Lamrim journey. I'm thinking to start a Lamrim basic journey, but also very juicy journey reflecting on our life. Important to bring our life to the practice, not only bring our practice to our life. So Lamrim is a very good practice to do that.